this here. Okay. No.
I'm the newbie here. I know you all know Theresa, but I'm Stephanie. I'll be the new co-chair for the travel program, so I'm taking over for Joanne and Emily. I'm really excited about it. So today we have Theresa. She's going to be talking about the travel from the Badlands and the Black Hills in South Dakota. So,
Thanks. So I see some new faces. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Theresa Kroll, and my mother, she's also Theresa. I outsource all the cooking to her, so you don't have to worry about me cooking anything. So I started coming to the travel program maybe 5 years ago. It was, I believe, one of the travel events was cross-posted in the hiking group, because we're in Sterling Heights. So we drive up once a month from Sterling Heights to attend the travel program. And I've always loved every single presentation, so I never get tired of hearing other people talk about their travels, and I'm lucky that I get to present my travels as well. When I do a trip, I've mostly done solo travel, and then I do travel with it's a travel club. I don't know how much longer it'll go on with COVID, but there was a lady out of Rochester who did trips, and she's already at her 100th trip. I know she was going to retire at her 100th trip, but I am signed up to go with her to the New Mexico Hot Air Balloon Festival in 2 weeks.
Fun.
So that'll be the next one, but she just announced Dubai today. So she goes all over the world. She's been to every continent. So between either my travel or going through this Solo Travelers Club, that's how I mostly do my travel. So for this trip, I kind of piggybacked on to a work trip. I was going to be in Omaha, Nebraska for a records convention. So I do records, like records management, so all of your employee files, your payroll files, I handle records. So we had a records convention, and then afterwards I decided, since I hadn't been to South Dakota, haven't been to Wyoming, and then also Nebraska, I wanted to tack on. So what this is, July 20th through the 30th, that's 10 days of what I tacked on by renting a car. So we flew into Omaha, had the convention, and then I rented a car when everyone else went home, and then this is going to be my trip. With this trip, you could spend an entire, this whole presentation could be animals, it could be geology, it could be the history of the Indians, so you could almost have 10 hours coverage with what I've got here. So I kind of highlight a little bit of everything, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. You can interrupt any time. I didn't want to put a whole lot of, I used to put a whole bunch of notes up here, but then I just decided I think it's kind of confusing, so we're just going to look at the pictures. But if you have any questions about anything I didn't talk about, just let me know. So here we go. Okay, so the trip starts in Omaha, and our final night of our convention, we got to take a paddle boat cruise. And we were lucky though, because it was in 2019, and they did have record amount of rainfall that year. So they had a huge snowstorm that hit in the Rockies in March, and because of that, the river was flooded, causing billions of dollars of damage throughout all the states down in Missouri. So you can see where the water is going, like right into the trees, whereas, and so even where we were, the barge that was sitting on was all damaged. So they had a barge bar next door that was all damaged and just flooded. Like they had a tiki bar, everything was flooded. So a bunch of levees broke, and like I said, it would cost billions of dollars. And when I was there in July, I asked the captain, the riverboat captain, how long until the river goes down? And he said, we don't think till October. And then I just checked the reports, the news, and it didn't go down until October. So there were several more months of flooding, and one day they gained like 9 inches overnight because it just wouldn't stop raining. And it was hot that day. We were all sitting we didn't even want to eat. It was so hot. We were all sitting on the back of the boat where the flag was, just trying to stay cool. There was just no getting out of that heat. Okay, so right there in Omaha, there's the Bob Carey Bridge, and that was put in 2008. So that's a 3,000 footbridge, and it spans between Iowa and Nebraska, and it lights up at night. So it's a suspension bridge, and it comes over onto the Nebraska side to the Lewis and Clark landing spot. And there's also the Lewis and Clark headquarters for their trail, for the National Park Trail. So I did go in, I love, fascinated by Lewis and Clark, would love to take the riverboat cruise someday. But it had a wonderful visitor center. I like to buy stuff. I didn't bring anything tonight because I didn't know how much we'd be handling stuff, but I could probably fill 3 tables worth of souvenirs and books and things like that. So got to visit the Lewis and Clark Visitor Center, and then we did the bridge. So what's fun about the bridge is you could be standing in Iowa and Nebraska at the same time. And so I found a dog. That's the dog breed that I rescued too. So anytime I see that dog breed, I call it Shiba stalking because they're Shiba Inus, they're Japanese. So anytime you see a Shiba on the street, I have to talk to the person. And that's underneath the footbridge. So I picked up my car and I wanted to do a few things in Omaha just to have lunch before I got on the road. And I went to the Monster Club, which was a newer bar. And I thought this would be cute given that Halloween is coming up. The whole thing is themed for all the horror movies. So I don't think I'd want to be sitting there with Stephen King's It. Like, I don't think I'd be I'm probably more comfortable next to the 1980s Gremlin that doesn't scare me. But they had excellent food too. But yeah, all the stuff everywhere, even like the salt and pepper shakers were in like skulls, so. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of show you where I went during that 10 days. So I started down here in Omaha, and then we come up to Sioux Falls was my first stop. And then I'm gonna come over to Mitchell, where we'll see a corn palace. And then in Chamberlain, we'll see a statue there that's overlooking the Missouri River. And then come to Wall. Has anyone been to the Badlands? I should ask. You have? Long time ago. And then have you also done Mount Rushmore? Yeah. Most people have. I hadn't been to Mount Rushmore. So Wall kind of became this like jumping off point towards going to Mount Rushmore and got more built up. And then they also have the missile silo there as well, which I'll be covering. Then I go into Custer State Park, so the Black Hills, and we'll be talking about that. And then I take another detour up to Deadwood and then over to Devil's Tower, and then coming back, spending another couple nights here in the Black Hills, and then flying home out of Rapid City. So my first stop is going to be Sioux Falls. So Sioux Falls is the 30% of the population in South Dakota lives in Sioux Falls. This is the Falls Park. So the park here is on the site of an old mill. It's got a cafe and then also an observation tower, and the cafe is in a building from 1908, the Light and Power building. And by the time I had gotten there, it was a little bit late on a Sunday, so not much was open in town, so I kind of just did this tour of the area. I love going to my thing when I travel is to get to the highest point. I love going to the highest point. If it's a restaurant or, like in Toronto, or if it's just the watchtower, you can go up, climb up it. So that's just the view from the watchtower. So the next stop is in Mitchell. So this is the Corn Palace. The Corn Palace was started in 1892. It was built to kind of have a place where they could go for fall festival. And as more and more people came to the Corn Palace, so all these murals, they're all made out of corn. This is all corn. All the exterior, that's the exterior there, and then the mural. So in 1921, this was actually, because they had rebuilt it a few times because it kept getting bigger, and they started having fairs and concerts, and then in 1921, this became the nicest basketball arena in the Midwest. So there's also the championship games would be played here, concerts, so it became, an event. So you have like different doors that you could go into, side doors and stuff, but the huge murals, so they were doing a salute to the military while I was there. They used 12 different colors of corn to make the murals, and they partner with a local design college, so the students actually create the murals every year. So the next, as we're driving off into the sunset, it's a lot of flat land, so this is what you're seeing. East South Dakota and West South Dakota are so different, I kept forgetting I was in the same state. I kept thinking that everything east of the Missouri was Nebraska. It was really hard for me to keep it straight in my head, because everything is so flat. You have the plains, and then there's the Missouri River right here, so this is Champlain, and then this was put in about 5 years ago. This is Dignity of Earth and Sky. It's a 50-foot structure, and it's made out of stainless steel, and it's to commemorate the Lakota and Dakota tribes. And then these sparkle in the sunlight as well. They're almost like stained glass. So as I'm driving off into the sunset. So unfortunately I get to the Badlands, and what I like to do is I like to alternate a cheap hotel and then a nicer hotel when you're on a road trip. This was my cheap hotel, so you're not gonna see any pictures of the hotel I stayed in. I slept in my raincoat, let's just put it that way. Wasn't too happy with it. But I spent probably 20 hours of the day at the park, so you didn't have to worry too much. But if you look over to the right, as you're coming in, so if you're still looking to the right, you're seeing that it's still this flat land, and then as you're looking to the left, everything just drops off into all the Badlands. And Badlands exist on every continent, so even though this is Badlands National Park, Badlands is a geological formation, and they do exist on every continent except Antarctica. So that's why if you go north to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, that's still Badlands. It's still the Badlands, and they even go down into Nebraska, and then Utah, California. Some of those national parks are also what are considered Badlands. And what makes it a Badland is it has gullies, it has these sandstone formations that they call hoodoos, where you see kind of like a mushroom cap on something, and lots of clay and gullies, and then you'll see the striations in the rock too. And they think the Badlands name came from either the French-Canadian fur traders who said these are bad lands to traverse, or Lakota called it Mako Sika, which is eroded land. And because of the clay, they do erode about 1 inch per year. So they're constantly changing. So when you go into the Badlands, it's not really a loop. I don't have a map of it, but it's kind of one road. So you have one road, you have the north and south side of the road, but you've got your visitor center at the north and the visitor center at the south. And it's not a loop like Custer State Park. You can kind of just keep driving in circles. You're kind of doing one swoop down, and then if you were to come up there, that's where you're gonna come into the missile silos. So once you get into the park, it is about, I think, 14 to 20 miles of just that. So it's gonna take, I think I spent probably 15 hours from the time I entered the park, because they have turnouts everywhere, but the wildlife is everywhere. So there is different areas you can go to. So this was a wildlife loop, and I got there about 7 a.m. and I was the only one there. So the bison were pretty active, and they were walking all over. There's also a prairie dog village right here. Okay, so the point of this picture is, and my mom makes fun of me because I take selfies. Well, I travel alone, so if I didn't take a selfie, I wouldn't be in my pictures. So you're gonna see these selfies with the animal behind me, and I got lucky on this trip. They upgraded me, and I ended up with a sunroof, because if I didn't have someone else turned me onto this idea. If I didn't have a sunroof, you wouldn't be getting out of your car. You don't want to be close to the buffalo. But when the buffalo's right here walking around, if you can, prairie dog, if you can prairie prairie dog out of the sunroof, then you're kind of safe. So actually, when I got in the night before and it was pitch dark, I asked the guy at the lobby if I could go down, and he said, yeah, the national park's open all night long, you can go anytime. Well, when I got there, there was a doctor from Chicago who was doing nighttime photography, and her husband was in the car, so he was watching Friends in the car. But she was out doing nighttime photography, so I actually hung out with her for an hour and just looked at the stars, and it was the darkest sky I've ever seen. And I know we have some dark sky parks in Michigan, but this was, I mean, just imagine looking that way, it was dark. Okay, so it might be a little hard to see, but these are some of the animals. So we've got the flowers that are there, you've got your antelope or pronghorn. These are wood burrowing owls. So they actually live in the prairie dog holes. So this is Prairie Dog Village, so they're all over the place. And then this is a family. There's like 4 of them all sitting on mom's back there. But these wood burrowing owls will go live in the burrow with them. So, one thing I really love is Smokey the Bear. And the year I was there was Smokey the Bear's 75th birthday, so there was a huge birthday celebration going on, and we'll see more of that in a minute. But I always like to take my picture with the signs. Because if you're out camping, this is something you need to know. If there's a high risk of fire, you might not have a campfire that night. So over here, I know it's gonna be hard to see, but since I came in at 7 in the morning, right there is a badger. And as I pulled my car up and you rolled the window down to take a picture, he was hissing at me. And so, because of the magic of cell phones, I was taking pictures of him. When I went back in on lunch to the visitor center, I was talking to the DNR and she said, or the national park, she said, no, you didn't see a badger. I said, no, he was hissing at me. And she said, no, you didn't see a badger. They're not out during the day. And I said, I think it was a badger. Well, when I pulled out my photograph, when you blow this up, it's totally a badger, and she could see he had roadkill. He was dragging it back to the, so his whole family was up here, and they all started hissing at me. But she noticed, she goes, oh yeah, he was getting roadkill off the road. That's why he was out. So I get to see a badger too. And the
That's what
buffalo.
we're eating today.
Huh?
I said, that's what we're eating
Yeah.
today. Steamed buffalo.
Yes. I can't tell the difference between beef and buffalo. To me, it tastes the same, but it's a panoramic I took from the wildlife area. So when you pull in the park, before you start down that one-way, not one-way, but you know, where you're gonna end up at the bottom, you can kind of cut off to the side, and that's your view. And you are allowed to camp anywhere in here. So what you would do is you would just walk in. You have to not be visible, and you have to be so many feet down. But there's rattlesnakes and there's animals running around, but you can go anywhere you want out here. That kind of shows the colors a little bit more. That's got more of the pinks and the yellows in there. And then someone was nice enough to take this picture of me, but you can walk. You know, you can kind of just walk anywhere you want. It's more of those colors. So it does change the whole way down. There's turnouts everywhere, the whole road down. But every time you're looking at something, it looks completely different. And as the sun's going over, everything changes too. So you want to be there for sunrise and you want to be there for sunset. And then this is the area where it's got more of that moon rocky landscape. So here's where I got to the visitor center, and they do have people actively working on fossils. So they're working right there and working here, and they're showing you what they're working on, and people find fossils all the time. I think the time I was there, a little girl had found a fossil. So it's active. It's an active place for rock hunters or fossil hunters. And then this was out in the, a ranger was giving a speech out in the, outside of the visitor center. this was another area that I just hiked into. I mean, you kind of just follow this trail and go into here. So if you, actually, I didn't even notice till it's on the big screen, but what I was gonna get to, in this image is something. So there's something here where I was going to look at. So we keep walking in. And there it is.
Yeah.
So he was just sitting up there and, you don't even know how they get up there because that's pretty steep, but they do, they get up there. So I was hiking on this side, there was a couple hiking on that side, but yeah, there he is. So I managed to get a little bit closer and he's just hanging out. And then back at the visitor center, they were doing a whole thing on the sun. And it was also the 60 years of the Badlands National Park. But I took this through their telescope. So they did have the telescope set up so you could look at the sun. And then this lady was doing a demonstration with the dollar bill showing how it had burned a hole, the sun had burned a hole through the dollar bill. And then she also had some interesting, we had solar glasses they were handing out. And they also had these beads that would change colors if UV hit them. So what she was doing is having these bracelets, these beaded bracelets, you put them under your clothes, and then you take it out, you find out that how much UV hits us even though we have shirts on. So it was really interesting. And there are rattlesnakes everywhere, no matter where you go. So this was one of the turnouts that you could do, and this is where they have the wooden stairwell. It is pretty steep. It actually looks easier here, but it is kind of steep and you kind of have to go one at a time. So I'm hoping to do a few more of these when I go to New Mexico in 2 weeks. When we visit, I think we're going to Bandelier National Park. So you're going up. It's kind of floating too. It's not really, it's kind of a little wobbly. And then when you get up to the top, this says stay to the right because this is a cliff. So you kind of try to stay on this side.
It's not anchored anywhere then, huh? It's just.
I think it's anchored at the top and the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah. And I went up behind a family, which is, usually if I'm in an area where if I'm, walking through a city at night or, on a trail that might get confusing, I try to stick close to like another group of people. And then usually they like that I'm taking so many pictures and I'll take pictures of them too. So they can all get in their photograph. So yeah, this is us hiking, but you can see how that's just a drop off right into that ravine right there. And then once you got to the top and you hiked through all of this, you kind of come around this corner and it just opens up right here. And that's a panoramic taken from that same area. And I think that's an eagle flying over. And then you can see how dark it would get, as the sun starts to, so I think this is probably around 4 p.m. when the sun's starting to come down a little bit. That's looking down. Might be a little hard to see, but yeah, so going down looks a little bit harder than going up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was slow going. Of course, you don't have to do those hard stairwells. You could do a nice path like this too. And then that would take you around and you'd come right back up to the front. And then these are just pictures of me in the shadow, because you had such just long shadows thrown everywhere on the rocks. And then the sunset, so as you're driving around, a whole bunch of people set up to take photographs of the sunset. So I found my spot, and then after the sun went down, you had that beautiful ice cream kind of colored sky that we get to see sometimes. And there was a little bit of haze too. There were forest fires. I forgot if they were coming from the east or the west, but there was a little bit of haze. Okay, so the next morning, got up and went to the Grasslands, National Grasslands Visitor Center. And that's where they had the Smokey the Bear celebration going on. So the Smokey the Bear, as we know it, was made by Rudolph Wendelson in 1946. He's the one who gave Smokey the Bear hands, the hat, the jeans, and the shovel. So he humanized Smokey the Bear. And then also, today is, the owl, give a hoot, don't pollute, it's his 50th birthday today, so. I like my cartoon characters. But they had some beautiful, just beautiful art that he had done all over. And then just coming back from there, and I was going through, kind of going back to that wildlife loop in the Badlands. These are just people's farms, but the animals were pretty close to the road. So you got to see your, non-wild animals too. It's coming back into the park. So this is day 2 at the park. Probably hitting the turnoffs I didn't hit the day before. So whenever, even when you go to Lake Michigan, oh, here's a turnoff, oh, here's a turnoff, oh, is this the same view? Well, in the Badlands, you get different views every time. I mean, unfortunately in Michigan, it's like, oh, it's like Michigan again. It's just a different turnoff. But every time you looked, it was just completely different. The landscape changes so fast. So I kind of made my way through the park this time, popped back up. And I didn't have the official tour to the Minuteman Missile Silo. The guided tour was booked. So I had decided to add this on last minute to my trip, and it had already been booked months in advance. But the Minuteman Missile Silo was part of thousands of missiles that we had for 30 years during the Cold War. And they have the visitor center, which I was able to go through the visitor center. And then they were filming something, I think for the Discovery Channel, for Discovery or Nat Geo. They were filming something, so they actually had the silo open, even though nobody's supposed to go in it, but they were filming. So we were able to go up and look in and pop our heads in, which was really nice. So this is the Delta 9. So there's the launch facility, and then there's also the Delta 9. And this is 12-foot radius, and then it's 80 feet deep. And that's a nuclear warhead. It's 1.2 megaton nuclear warhead. And it's one of 2 places where you can view a missile. Then again, coming back towards the north entrance to the Badlands, you have to go to Wall Drug. So, does everyone know what Wall Drug is? Because it's actually pretty, it's become pretty famous around the world. The bumper sticker, where the heck is Wall Drug? So this became famous in 1931, a family, and it's still owned by the same family. A family built it in preparation for Mount Rushmore coming out. And it was kind of a tourist trap, but they have signs for miles. In every adjacent state, you see these signs, Wall Drug signs, and they kind of cornered the market on advertising. So they said free ice water just ahead. And they gave out so much free ice water that was what they kind of sold it as, but it's gotten built up and built up and built up. It's like a huge mall, but it is still all under one proprietor. And they have a chapel, and they have an ice cream parlor, and the food, and they make their own donuts, and they give free coffee and donuts to the military. But it was just really neat, because you could walk around and get lost. But it was all still new stuff. Like, I actually bought camping gear while I was here. It was cheaper than what I would have paid here. So it was really cute. I got some ice cream. Like I said, the same family still owns it, which is great. And then these signs are everywhere. So if you're anywhere in the world, they've now started adding, like, Wall Drug, how many miles. So if you're in Afghanistan, they'll have a sign that says Wall Drug 6,000 miles away, or whatever, however many miles. But these signs are all over the world now. Okay, so this is the fun part of where I stayed. So I booked, because I love to camp, but I couldn't bring my camping gear with me. This is what they call glamping. And Michigan just got a glamping tent. I'm going to be staying there in a week. It's nothing like this. It's totally different. But glamping is these canvas tents. They're kind of like expedition style, like you would see in Africa. This is going to be a little bit more money. They're all over this property. And then this is the mess hall. This is where you check in, and then this is where you get your food. And since I went 2 years ago, I think they had 5, now I think they're up to 15. They're in a lot of the national parks. They have endless amounts of free activities. So you've got yoga, we had trivia night, we had bingo night, live music, free s'mores every night at the campfire. They set everything up for you. This is where you have the yoga. That's Mount Rushmore right there. So we had just this wonderful prime spot. Every night I could watch the nighttime lighting ceremony of Mount Rushmore. That's what it looked like on the inside. There's no electricity, no Wi-Fi. So the families actually had to hang out with each other. So this shows you like what my porch looked like. And they'll bring up, they'll bring a bucket so you can bring like drinks or wine back or pop back to your area. There's a stove in here, so if you wanted to, you could put wood in it if it was chilly at night. You can zip these or you can unzip the windows. And then this is what it looked like. This is a very nice bed, nicer than the bed in the Badlands. But what they do have is they have a little lantern and there's a little USB charger, so you can charge your phone at least, but that's about it. Unless you bring your own power pack. There's no TV, there's no electricity, and it is like regular camping, but you have carpeting here, you have a beautiful rug, beautiful furniture, and it was just an amazing place. And they'll drive you. They take the golf cart and they drive you there and they put your luggage away. So that's just looking out at Mount Rushmore. My first night there, I actually had pheasant. It was really good. Food was incredible and actually was reasonably priced. Then I went to the nighttime lighting ceremony of Rushmore. There was a lot of construction going on, so I just basically came in just to see the nighttime lighting ceremony. I don't know if I walked through anything. I don't know if they had a visitor center open. That might have been under construction too. Okay, so the next morning, I went to Jewel Cave. So Jewel Cave, there's 2 areas of the Black Hills, and they're called the Black Hills because from a distance, all the evergreen trees make it look black. So the Black Hills, there's a north part of Black Hills, there's a south part of Black Hills. It's kind of like the eastern and western side of the UP. You can't do all of it in one trip. You're not going to do all of it in a weekend. You have to pick and choose what you want to do. So in the south end of the Black Hills, we have Custer State Park, you have the Crazy Horse Monument, Mount Rushmore, you have Wing Cave and Jewel Cave. Now, Jewel Cave is the 3rd largest cave system in the world. It's the 2nd largest in America. And some of these you can buy a ticket in advance. Some of them you have to be there at 10 a.m. and hope you get a ticket. So the tour I wanted to get on was the lantern tour, which actually started later in the day, but I had to get there early to get my ticket for that. So I got here early and I ended up doing 2 tours. This is the one where you go down in an elevator and then you do a guided tour where you don't have to climb and stuff like that. The interesting thing about this is they've now mapped, I believe, 208 miles of this cave system. And the person who mapped the most of it, I believe she's still alive, Jan Kahn, her and her husband, she's 94 now. She mapped most of it with her husband. So this is the cave system here. And I do have friends that are cavers, and they keep trying to get me to go caving in Kentucky. So that's really interesting. That's its own thing. You have to be okay with cave spiders, cave insects. You go in at midnight and you come out at midnight because you need your eyes to be adjusted. And you pack out everything that goes in with you. So you have water bottle here, and when you leave, the water bottle is filled with urine because you can't leave anything in the cave. You have to pack out everything. So even, you can't even, use the ladies' room in the cave. It has to come out with you. So they normally do 4-day trips because how far can you get in 4 days that you have to come back out. And if something were to happen in a cave, there's no help coming. So, but the cave formations were just beautiful. I mean, they call it Jewel Cave for a reason. It was really stunning. So I had an hour to kill between the 2 tours, so I went across the street, and there was Hell Canyon. So I went over to Hell Canyon, and I went to go do this hike up here, in the spires, and it was just a beautiful day. It was was a nice hike. Then I came back and here we are ready to go into the lantern tour, which was really neat. And then this you're actually climbing stairs and there's no lights. So you're just the people holding the lanterns provides the light for the whole trip, and you're climbing wooden steps, and it's gonna be a little bit more unsafe. You have to be watching, you know, wear your tennis shoes, don't have dangling purses. So on our way down, right here is a bat. So he's just hanging out, and this is the stairwell, or the ladder, I should say. And there's just a bat hanging out there. I hope he was sleeping. He was still there when we left. But what I find cute is my mother's full Croatian, and I'm part Croatian. And I took Croatian language lessons during COVID. And the word for bat is slepi miš in Croatian, and it means sleepy mouse. So I thought, oh, he does look like a sleepy mouse, just hanging out there. So that's us on the tour. And then on the way out, there he is still sleeping. And then, you know, we all climb up. But it was a neat tour. I didn't take too many pictures because you had to be watching where you were going. That night we had a huge storm roll in. It was interesting. I mean, this whole thing was just shaking. I mean, the storm came in pretty quick. But this just shows that the families, every family was getting along. No Wi-Fi, everybody was playing board games, everybody was having a good time. We had bingo one night, and then I sat at a table with a lady who I believe is in her 60s, and she had a goal of seeing all the national parks. So I'm getting ready to leave and go north to the North Black Hills. And my original plan was to go to Theodore Roosevelt, but I didn't want to do that much driving by myself. She actually was going to Theodore Roosevelt. So she was going up to Theodore Roosevelt to go horseback riding. I was going to Deadwood to go horseback riding. But we had dinner together, and the funny thing is we both decided to come back to this place. We didn't have anything booked, and they gave us a discount to come back. So we're both going to come back to the glamping place after we go do our 2 days somewhere else. So now we're into Custer State Park. Let's see if I have anything on this. Custer State Park has 2 million visitors a year. The Badlands has about 1 million. So Custer State Park gets 2 million visitors. Rushmore gets around 2 million, and then Waldrop gets about 2 million visitors. It also has the highest point east of the Rockies. It has Black Elk Peak, and that's at 7,244 elevation. That you have to hike up. So some people at the tent camping, some people had done it, but it is going to be like a full 8-hour day. So I didn't want to, you know, take 8 hours to do that by myself. But when I do go back, I would do it. Let's see what we have here. Oh, that's. So I call mom so I can FaceTime my dog while I'm traveling. So that's my dog. And that's me up there. I'm in the car with the sunroof, but I'm FaceTiming the dog so I can say hello to him. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to work. This is, I have a couple videos, they're very short. I'm staying out of the sunroof.
Hey, little baby buffalo.
I was so excited. But they do, so my window's down here too. They do come right up to the car. And if you go to the visitor center and ask how many cars have been mauled today, they'll tell you.
Oh.
They will come right up, and if they're, this was rutting season, so they're going nuts. So you'll see that in a few videos, but you know, they're all throughout here. I know it's a little hard to see because they almost look like the trees, but they come right up, and the whole term of getting stuck in a buffalo jam, that's real. But they could gore, they can gore you.
Yeah.
People get gored because, so that little baby, I was coming down a different road. I was by myself again, nobody was on this road. It was early in the morning. And all of a sudden this baby popped out of nowhere and almost put its head in my car. I mean, it was close enough that I could have reached out and pet it, just like that. And then I looked at it and I realized his horns were about that big. And if he decided to put his head in the car, and then I thought, well, wait, where's Mama? Where's Mama Buffalo?
Yeah.
So no, I thankfully I stopped myself and didn't pet, but those are more pictures of how close they get to the car. This, I believe, is a video. So hopefully we can hear this. So everyone stopped, and that guy's just sitting in the bed of his truck on a chair. So that's what I wanted to show you. He just showed up for like an hour, put a chair in the bed of his truck, and I didn't realize what was going on at first because this was my first time with all the buffalo. But I had my head popped out, you know, the sunroof, and I looked at him, and I was like, "Can you do that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, just don't make any sudden movements." So, okay, but you also saw there was a Jeep here too. They have Jeep tours that'll take you around. So you don't have to worry about your car getting mauled. And, that or run a car like I did. So you don't have to worry about it.
Wow.
But you'll see in the next video, so what they're doing is he's sticking his tongue out. The next video, I think you can see it better, but he's going, so they'll just take a nap right in the middle of the road. Then you're stuck, you're just waiting. And then these guys, so the pronghorn, I mean, I had parked somewhere where they were just running like a football field, just running in circles. I mean, it was crazy. So you've got the buffalo and then you've got them just racing around like crazy. That's me looking like, hey, buffalo right there. Right, is this a video? Oh, this is to show, and the horseback riders. I'd be a little nervous about that too, but I guess they're used to it. And then there goes the Jeeps, because that just finally opened up, so people were able to get through. So this was the highest point I could drive to. This is the fire tower, Mount Coolidge. And then there was like 3 different lodge areas in Custer State Park where you could eat. Like a nice meal, and they also had like kayaking in a lake nearby where you could, rent. So I think here I had rabbit, rattlesnake, and buffalo, maybe. So I kind of went with the wild game theme. But this is looking towards that Black Elk Peak. I think it's either that peak or that peak is going to be the highest peak right there. Here's goes that guy. Yeah. So, I mean, I couldn't imagine being the motorcyclist.
Oh,
Because then you're just stuck. I mean, you can't go anywhere. I mean, you could be backed up for an hour just sitting there.
oh, wow.
So, that was funny, but he just runs by.
Yeah.
Then at the south end of the park where they have the buffalo roundup every year. So next week, they have where they round up all the buffalo. There's usually about, I believe, 1,400 to 1,800 in the park. They decide which ones are going to be sold off. That'll go to restaurants or farms or wherever, because they need to keep the herd safe. So as they go into winter, they have to make sure they have enough food, and they actually have, the park is pretty big, but they have quadrants where they can fence off parts of the park. So they can keep buffalo in one area. So as the stampedes, they're getting ready for the buffalo stampede, the cowboys start rounding up the buffalo and pushing them south in the park. And down here where the corrals are is where they have the wild burros, but they're kind of domesticated wild burros. So everybody goes down there to hang out with the burros. So here's some pictures, and one of the ladies who brought carrots, so she was nice enough to give me some carrots. And I just got these great pictures of them. And then also down on that side, great visitor center. They have a video with Kevin Costner in it, and Dances with Wolves was filmed nearby here. and they have a whole lot of information on, this is actually, I know it's hard to see, but it's to judge what they're thinking by their tail. So if the tail's going this way, or it's just like a dog, you know, it's doing one thing or the other, you know, you wanna get away. How far away you really should be, because people, I mean, you still see people walk up and try to take pictures right next to them. And then also all the animals that live in this prairie dog village. So you've got your marmots and your weasels, you've got your rattlesnakes, you've got the wood burrowing owls. They all use that area. On the north end of the park, you have the Needles Highway. That's its own scenic drive. It is open seasonally, so in the winter it's not going to be open. But this is going to be more of your limestone formations. They call them the cathedral spires. And this was all mapped out by Peter Norbeck. He was a governor of South Dakota, and he mapped it all out on horseback before they built it. There's a lot of tunnels, so it's a one-car only tunnel. And then they have pigtail loops too, which if you drive through them, you kind of cross over on yourself again. So you're kind of like going down like this through these pigtail loops. And then, of course, right near there is also Sylvan Lake. So Sylvan Lake is gorgeous, and there's also a restaurant, there's the hotel, there's camping. There's a whole bunch of hiking around here as well. You can rent paddle boards. And that's just looking at the spires. So I actually hiked up, so you can park, and I hiked up through the spires. So you can actually get on top here, so you'll see that in a second. So that's me standing there, and that's the car going through the tunnel. And then you park your car kind of right here if you're lucky enough to get a spot, and you just kind of walk over to where that is. You could just sit there and watch the cars take turns going through. And then hikes through on the other side. So if you kind of hike around all these, then you get to this area. And this is what the hoodoos are. So the hoodoos, you'll see these in Turkey too, in Cappadocia, where they've got this, they call them the mushroom tips, because sandstone, this is eroding with the sandstone. And then this is the Needle's Eye. That's one of the more famous structures there, all done by erosion. And then a panorama. So I sat there for a while and just looked out, relaxed a little bit. Did some kayaking. That almost looks, doesn't that look like fake? It looks like I was photoshopped in there. So after lunch, I didn't feel like getting back in the car, so I did some paddling in the lake. Also, right in this area, you've got Fort Custer, so where Custer's expedition actually was. This is the old fort where he came in 1874, I think he came in. And I really wanted to see the goats, and I didn't, so I had to take my picture with that one in the visitor center. Actually, I'll kind of talk about, so while I was there, I did buy a couple pictures of the goat, and there's a book that I picked up, the author was there, so it's Dick Kettlewell. He's written several books. I don't know if people have seen them, but they're kind of picture books. And then I bought this one that he did. He was there doing an art show. But he's got a whole bunch. So he has like baby bison and antelope. And so they're just books that I swear I've seen before in our bookstores here in Michigan. So when I saw the books, I said, oh, I think I have this at home. But then I ended up buying a couple things from him because he was there a couple days in the visitor center. So that was pretty neat. So I did go north to Deadwood. So now we're in the North Black Hills, and there, in the North Black Hills, you have the Devil's Tower, you have Deadwood, Sturgis, where they have the motorcycle rally, Spearfish Canyon, one of the most beautiful drives that you can do. So I had to laugh because this was my cheap hotel. This is my view out my window. It's just a rock wall. So I didn't have to worry about pulling the shades down at least. But what my goal was was, when I got there, I said, I don't know what I wanna do here, I know I'm gonna go horseback riding, but the only thing in town I saw that I really wanted to do was there was a lady who owned a glass blowing shop. So I literally put my bag down, walk out the front door, cause there's something going on outside, I didn't know what was going on. Well, it was the Days of '76 rodeo, and as I walk out my hotel door, there was a lady and her husband standing at the light, and I said, I've never been to a rodeo, I really like animals, do they get hurt? Maybe I'll go over there, it looks like something's going on, they have shopping, I wanna go check that out. And she goes, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I own the glass blowing shop in town. So I'm like, what luck? So of course, she had an extra ticket, so she takes me to the rodeo. The rodeo has been going on for 100 years, I believe. The Days of '76 is to commemorate it's to honor the prospectors, the miners, and the madams that worked in Deadwood. And I did turn my eyes away when they did the baby calf roping, I didn't like that. But the patriotism that you see, because again, families were together, no one was on their cell phone, which I found shocking. Everyone's watching the rodeo. It was just good, clean, like when you're at Disney, good, clean, family fun. And everybody was just happy to be there. You know, like it reminded me of like what America would have been before social media, whatever. So I liked it so much that, so here's my future ex-husband. He was sitting next to me. But yeah, just your lots of farmers, and then the ladies who do like the auxiliary horseback riding. So then the glass blowing lady, her name is, forget her name, Terry. So she took me out that night. Her husband works in the gold mine, so he had to go to bed early. But she was excited to take me out dancing, and all the cowboys in town for the rodeo, oh boy, can they dance. So I do Croatian folk dancing, and I've also done polka. No, nothing compares to a cowboy swinging you in circles like you're on some kind of ride at Pablo, because it was just nuts. So we did go dancing. We had a great time dancing. It was a lot of fun. I was talking to a cowboy who said to me, you know, I haven't broken any bones, only all my fingers, all my toes, and my nose. And I was like, wait, that's all. And so I was telling her later, and she goes, well, no, that's nothing for a cowboy. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then also they have the saloon, and I think this was where Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane would play cards. So they're actually buried down the street in Mount Moriah Cemetery, and I didn't have enough time to get there. I think there was a small fee to get in, and I just ran out of time because I was going to Spearfish Canyon. So the next morning I got up, I've got my rodeo shirt on, I'm ready to go, and we're gonna go horseback riding. And I was telling a story earlier that it was really nice that day, but the lady said I almost canceled on you because it's too humid for the horses to go out. I was like, what do you mean humid? It's nice here. Nothing like the humidity we had during our 100-degree heat index. So we go horseback riding, and she takes me up in the hills, and this was not your normal horseback riding. This was like, I kept getting run into trees, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And she goes, oh, just push off the tree. And I'm like, oh, okay. This isn't Disney World horseback riding. We're on this nice groomed trail. Like, we were going up hills and all over the place. So that's the view from the top. And then I come over to Spearfish Canyon. I didn't know if we need to take a break or if I should just keep going. Does anyone need a 5-minute break, or if we just keep going? I am closer to the end. We used to take breaks when we had tons of food, but no. Okay, all right, I'm just gonna keep going then. So then this is Spearfish Canyon, and this is west of Deadwood. It's a 20-mile drive. It's just beautiful. It has 1,000-foot spire walls that are made out of granite. There's rock climbing, there's biking, fishing, and photography. I mean, there's just waterfalls everywhere. You can pull out everywhere and see waterfalls. And one of the really nice things was when I pulled over to see one waterfall, there was a couple, and they asked me to take their photograph, and they said it was their 50-year wedding anniversary, and for their honeymoon, they had come to that waterfall. So I got to take a picture of them on their 50-year wedding anniversary. That was really nice. Then I met another couple, and it started pouring rain. So we were hiking together, and it poured rain, and then we both caught up with each other at another, we had pulled off at the same stop, so we caught up with each other for lunch too, so that was really nice. Going into this town though, one thing that it said you want to eat is, this is Indian fry bread. I don't know if anyone's had it here. Mom and I have actually gone to the powwows in Michigan, so they do have Indian fry bread at the powwows. This is kind of like water, baking soda, flour, and salt, I believe. It's just 4 ingredients, and then they fry it up. And now there's new ways of making it, so you don't fry it, you can bake them and stuff. But they basically, just the bread alone would probably have 700 calories in it and 30 grams of fat. So this is also where you're kind of the jumping off point for all the little towns, including Sturgis. So this is where all the motorcyclists were. It was before Sturgis Bike Week, but I did meet a ton of people riding, and they call them motorcycle rallies. And one of the ladies I met, she was a firefighter, and I said, I don't understand I didn't understand what the allure of riding the bike in the mountains was, because I thought it was scary. And she said, no, you want to ride in the mountains. Riding in the city is scary. And I said, oh, okay, I get it now. Because you can kind of do your own thing in the mountains. And she said, basically when they go and they take over a whole hotel, because it's like the whole, firefighters union or whatever they're in, that they all go do these trips together. So it seemed pretty cool. So this was just a corner cafe where you could get this fry bread. It was delicious. Then I had to head out to Wyoming for Devil's Tower. I wasn't going to spend the night here. I was going to come back into Deadwood, but it was pouring rain. So I did opt to not go into Devil's Tower. Had I parked and gone in, I just would have been walking in the rain, reading all the plaques. And there's a chance I might go back and do some rock climbing someday anyway. But they do shut this down to rock climbing. It's a huge rock climbing destination, and if people have visited, this is basalt. Mom, how do you pronounce that? Basalt. So you'll see the same formations like in Iceland when you see those structures, or you see where they kind of came out of the ground because of volcanic activity. But what I did get out of this, because I did stop and eat a little bit too at the center down here, beautiful rainbow. So even though it was raining, I ended up taking some really good shots because of the contrast between like this shot I just love, because it was just, the storm was passing over and the sun was just starting to come out, but I think I had about a 2-hour drive to get back to Deadwood, so I kind of just wanted to get back. So this is the view from my hotel. So you can see where this is right here is with the light that I met that, the glassblower lady at, and this was the rodeo right here. So I said, I liked it so much, why not go back? So I went back for round 2, and I got to kiss one of the babies, just like kiss the donkey. I don't have to worry about COVID, I probably caught everything from these guys. So again, it just was entertaining. The clown, the announcer. I just like good, clean humor and stuff like that. It's just a nice break. So it was a fun night. They also have a museum too for the rodeo. I didn't have time to go to the museum. I'll go next time I come. And then I just kind of walked around town a little bit in the morning. They also have a parade for the Days of 76. It's a really big deal for them. Then kind of made my way back down to the south end again. So now I've come back to stay a few more nights in the southern Black Hills, and I've come back to Sylvan Lake here. And this is actually a path right here, so you could walk. There was like a boardwalk that went all the way around the lake, so you could walk through all of that. These are more of the cathedral spires. This is another overlook. And this is more so looking, if it was clear, you could see the Badlands from up there. So because of the haze of the fires that were somewhere, but if it was a clear day, they had, how they have the binoculars up, and it will say on a clear day you can actually see the Badlands, and they show you the little layout of everything. Also right here is the city of Custer, and in front of every building they had a painted buffalo. And I love seeing that kind of stuff too, like when there's a moose or a cow or whatever the city's doing. I love seeing how everybody paints them differently. So that's kind of a better picture of, this is where the Badlands is right here. Of course, I went back to the donkeys again. Get my fix with the animal loving. So when I came back, they actually upgraded me too, which was nice. So this time I got one with the shower, and the other one didn't have a shower and bathroom, but I was real close. Just like at a state park, you know, there's bathrooms everywhere if you're camping. But there's another even better upgrade you can have, and that's to have the bed with the plexiglass over the bed, because then you can watch the northern lights or the stars at night. So it would be like where the bed, it comes out here, and there'd be plexiglass over the bed, so you could look at the stars all night long. And at the campfire, one of the ladies brought her huge telescope, and we were looking at all the planets. That was nice. And that's where we had our s'mores. I think I had regular food the next time, like fries and a burger probably. But again, got to sit there and overlook Rushmore. Everybody was out, there's live music out there. Okay, so it is still camping. I woke up with that right next to me. So even though it's clamping, there was still a critter in my bed. So I wasn't alone that trip. In 2 weeks, I'll go stay at Sleeper State Park, which put their version of this in. Their version is literally a piece of wood, a canvas, and some kind of bed where you bring your own sheets. So I think there might be one chair on the porch. But I am right on Lake Huron. So it won't be as cute as this, but I can bring my own stuff. So I'm excited. So I'm heading back into town where I'm going to fly out of Rapid City. There's Bear Country USA, and this is also still family owned. It is, right here. Drive-Through Wildlife Park started in 1972. So they have over 200 bear now. I think they started with 3 bear. But they also have a ton of animals. They have bobcats and wolves. They breed them there. Sometimes they do take animals that have been injured in the wild, and the DNR will let them know so they can take them. But this is interesting because you're used to the buffalo at this point, but not the bear just walking around everywhere. So here's the bear just roaming around. And he wasn't an Adidas bear. I was wearing my tracksuit, so that's the reflection of me. It would be cute if he was. They're just everywhere. And then there's the babies. And then here's the hot tub. You know, they're just chilling. The baby section, I mean, you could have just stood there all day and watched the babies. They were so fun to watch, and they were playing with each other. It's what's amazing about visiting any zoo or wildlife areas if you get there when they're feeding. So I found that I've been really lucky lately that they'll say, oh, why don't you stick around? We're going to actually do the feeding in 20 minutes, and then you could just kind of hover because it's so cute when they actually do the feeding, and they know. So he's looking because the lady was over here about ready to feed them. So it's just some more pictures. Then I came into town, so I work at Kelly Services. I do records for them. And then when I first started in this department, we had 700 branches. Well, before COVID, we started closing them down because a lot of things are online. This is one of the branches we had in Rapid City. And what's nice about it is when you're traveling, you could walk into a branch and it's kind of like being home. So even though I'd been on this trip for 14 days now, I walked into the Kelly branch and I just sat down and talked to the recruiters. So I sat there for about 3 hours and talked to them. And it just felt like you were home. And that's what our CEO, who had just retired, said the same thing, because I think he spent 40 some years with the company. He started in Middle America, and he said the same thing. You go somewhere and you walk into a branch and you just feel like you're home. So it didn't quite work out that way when I walked into a branch in Switzerland. They were like, what are you doing here? We're working. But here in Midwest America, they, sat me down and gave me a coffee. So that was nice. The recruiter also, I said, where should I stay? I don't know where to stay tonight. I want to be close to the airport, but I want to be safe so I can walk around. Because if I'm traveling by myself, I always want a place where the front desk will know who I am. They know when I come in. And she said, you want to stay, if you can get a good rate, go to the Alex Johnson. So the Alex Johnson, this hotel here, is on the National Historic Registry. And I did call them, and I was asking for their best rate, and they go, oh, have you never stayed here before? And I said, no, I've never even been in Rapid City before. And they go, oh, we'll give you the new Booker rate. So they just gave me a huge discount, like even cheaper than Priceline. It was cheaper than the Holiday Inn, and I was like, oh, okay. Lots of history here. So this is, Alex Johnson was the VP of Chicago and Northwest Railroad. He built this in 1928. And the architecture is a combination of Plains Indians and Germanic Tudor, because there are a lot of Germans that migrated to this area. So you'll see a lot of the Indian, it still has kind of like that feel of the lodges out west. And then this chandelier, which is about, it's over 80 years old, is actually warheads, like Indian warheads. So this is also haunted. They have a whole book up front talking about, like, you could write what you saw and what you heard. So they claim that there was a bride who was married here, and they see her walking down the hallways. There's stories of little girls. There's also stories that Alex Johnson is walking around to make sure that his hotel is still running properly. And then I have a little bit of a spooky story too. So first we'll go into town. So I put my stuff away, and now I'm going into town because there's a few things I want to see that I was going to hit within walking distance. So Rapid City is known for their statues of every president. So I don't know who that one is. Mom, do you know who that president is? Maybe. Okay, so that's Reagan. That's, yeah, I don't know, I forgot who that is. But then there's also these alleys with this graffiti that's actually really, really nice art. So Memorial Park down the street has pieces of the Berlin Wall. So it was really interesting to have this there. Basically, just a resident bought these pieces, I think in 1996, and donated them to the city. So you do have the tank tracks. So that was between the Brandenburg Gate and Checkpoint Charlie from 1961. Donated in honor of the Air Force at Ellsworth Air Force Base and all the military, ready to protect the free world in war and peace. And then they have two 12-foot segments of the Berlin Wall as well. They have this now leaving the American sector. And then there's a ton of informational plaques as well with all the, the history and that type of stuff there too. So I thought people here would like this. Really cute bookshop called Mitzi's Books. It was very whimsical. It was one of those places where you could just walk in and any nook and cranny you could find there was a nice wooden armchair to sit in, and fluffy animals, fluffy hats, murals, things hanging from the ceiling. I could have spent all day in there as well. Then more graffiti. I did find a couple to walk with me. They were kind of alarmed. They said, are you guys walking around? And they're like, what, why? I said, no, I just want to walk with you, because I knew they were from my hotel. So we went through the alley, and then once we got a couple blocks in, we said, okay, we'll go back. So it wasn't the best. There were areas of town we didn't want to walk in alone. So another thing I look for with my hotels is, again, I love having that high spot. The Alex Johnson has a rooftop terrace. So you could have dinner up here, you could have cocktails, they had the fire going, and then you could watch the sunset, which was just the amazing end to my trip. So my creepy story about this hotel was that they gave me, I don't know if they upgraded me or if they downgraded me, but I got some kind of corner suite that had almost 2 rooms. So it had 2 doors to the hallway. because there was a door for that part of the room, and then there was a door for this part of the room, and then there were like locked closet doors that didn't seem to go anywhere. So I didn't really like that, so I deadbolted, I put the chain on the other door, and I chose which room I was gonna sleep in, and I kept the lights on all night and the TV. So I was just a little creeped out by that. I've never seen like two corner rooms that were just open to each other. I don't know, but maybe I was needing an upgrade. So let's see. So that's the end of the trail. And I just want to wish everyone safe travels for their next trip too, but could open for questions too.
Any Indian presence at all?
They, I believe the Indians were, so where the wildlife loop was at the Badlands, there is also a south unit. So if you were to try to go to the south unit, I was told you could get fired at. They didn't want people coming down there. You also had to have like a four-wheel drive Jeep because those roads weren't really maintained.
Okay.
But yeah, they did say that you could get fired upon if you went down.
So there are people living up in these different areas?
I don't think they were living, in the south unit, I think they were living in the adjacent areas,
Oh, okay.
but not in the national park itself. Trying to think about the other,
Fire department by home.
what?
Fire department by home. The Indians?
In my head, I'm trying to remember if it was a reservation or, I mean, I would assume it had to be a reservation.
Pine Ridge is there.
Oh, Pine Ridge?
Pine Ridge is there for Lakota.
Yes, yeah,
We visited them.
okay. But
when we went.
Are they the ones at the south unit or is that
I
a
don't,
totally
I've
different?
never heard of it called the South
Oh,
Unit.
okay, all right.
Just
So
the
they would shoot
Pine
at
Ridge
you?
Reservation
No, they didn't.
for Lakota Sioux.
No.
And we contacted someone
Yeah,
who was, he was actually Anabascan
okay.
tribe from Quebec, but he was married to a Lakota, and he does tours around that area, Pine Ridge
Okay.
and Badlands and such,
I'm gonna look it up right now, just so I can see.
and actually has a place for you to stay there on the reservation.
I wonder if
It
years
was a
ago, we
reservation.
saw quite a few Indians
Northern
here and there
But
working in
we just
different
walked in,
places.
I never heard of anybody.
But when were you there?
Oh, this
We
is-
were there most recently about 5 years ago.
Okay.
No, this would be,
They were,
no, this was north of that, yeah, so I see where it's at. That's south of where that, like, south unit area that they, because where I'm talking about is Sand Creek Scenic. There's a town called Scenic there too, where they said you don't wanna like go off trail there. Now, I'm not saying it was the Indians, I'm just saying what, I forgot what it
Yeah,
was,
oh,
what it
whatever.
said. Yeah, but I was like, I probably can't get down there anyway. I know there was something about, cause Kevin Costner bought some land and he ended up building some kind of museum to the buffalo. But I heard from the people in Deadwood that they forced him to make the museum, cause he was actually gonna build maybe a mansion or something and everyone hates Kevin Costner there. So instead he ended up having to build his, buffalo museum, I guess, under duress because he was gonna do something else, I guess. Is what the townspeople told me, because I was asking the same thing, and I actually didn't even watch Dances with Wolves until the pandemic. So I just watched it, probably this winter is when I saw it. It was a good movie, but. Any other questions?
it's pretty, so you're going to go back someday, huh?
Oh, I'd love to, I would love to go for the Stampede. They actually, so the Buffalo Roundup, they do September 25th and 26th. They actually did live broadcast it last year, and I watched it while I was on my, someone else was driving, but we were going camping. So I actually got to watch the Stampede on a live stream. They're gonna have it on Facebook. So if you go to the Custer State Park, they'll have a whole thing on the Buffalo Stampede.
Wow.
But I've heard it's just amazing. So I would love to go back for my birthday and be able to, but you have to get there, I think, at 6 in the morning.
Oh, wow,
Right, so you're there at 6 in the morning, and I think the Stampede's at like 10,
wow,
so,
wow.
or at least, you know, when they get them
Yeah.
closer to the,
Yeah.
to the corral.
Wow.
Yeah, but it would be, it's just neat to see the cowboys doing their thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And the lady who took me horseback riding, she said it's really hard to get in to be a cowboy for that. And, she did get to do it a couple of years. So, she was a neat lady. She didn't want me to leave. She wanted me to stay. She's like, 'cause she actually has, interns, like students who stay at her farm and take care of the animals. But she said, all these kids want to be on their phones all the time. She's like, I just want to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, I have to, you know, I was still trying to get to Devil's Tower that day, so I had to leave. But she was really interesting. And you could hear her horses she had the males over on one side, the females over on another side. You could hear the horses just going, nuts, wanting to be with the females. So,
Wow, well, you really saw a lot.
yeah, I pack a lot in. My trips are like the way the trips are when I go on these tours. Like when you go on a tour, I pack so much in. Now, I did make time to like just sit, you know, when I was hiking, just sit. And then after lunch, like I said, I'd go kayaking, just sit, just so you're not,
Yeah.
because you're just exhausted by the time you get back to
It's
your
insane.
hotel room.
That's how she shops too.
So,
To the mall with her, she do, 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 do. One side or the
time
other.
is money.
Trying to fit as much as you can, you know, to that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, and it's crazy, because as much as I fit in, you know, you could have sat just at the tent. You could have sat at the tent and just sat there all day and looked out on the vista. You know, you didn't even have to do anything. But, yes, you could spend your whole day looking for the animals. You could spend a whole day in the museum.
Yeah.
You know, so to try to fit in the extra stuff like horseback riding and kayaking, and if, when I go back, I would like to do the rock climbing. There was a rock climbing group that was out there, so I would like to do that. So,
We saw people climbing Devil's Tower.
oh, you did?
It looked
Really?
very scary,
Oh,
It's-
because it's just,
yeah.
it's just straight
Yeah,
up.
but it's, but it's very important to the native population, we should
Yeah.
be climbing it.
Yeah, that's
so
what
they,
we
yeah.
were told. They said
No,
they
we
do
should.
allow people to climb it, but I think it's probably either Dakota or Blackfeet
Yeah.
that are from around that
Yeah.
area. They really, it's a sacred place to them, and they don't like people climbing.
Yeah, so June of every year, no rock climbers. They take, the whole month
Oh,
of
for
June, no
June.
one's allowed to climb, yeah, because of that, so they kind of work,
For ceremonial
Oh, okay.
yeah,
use.
out of respect, and the rock climbing community, I mean, for the most part, there are people who wanna honor that, so, you know, but I was watching a presentation on the people who had climbed Devil's Tower, and this group of people didn't make any plans. They went out, they signed their name when they went up, they went out to sign their name when they left.
Oh,
And they
no.
said they were sitting at camp that night, and they could see the spotlight going
Oh,
around.
no.
And they go, oh, well, they were probably looking for us, because we never signed out. So you've got the irresponsible,
Yeah.
you know, there's the rock climbing friends I have, and, actually, it's kind of a lead into next month, if you guys come next month. There's a hint on this page for next month's presentation. So, ice climbing. So I'm gonna do, next month, I'm gonna bring all my, gear in for that. So I got into that a few years ago, but there are people you trust, and there's people you don't wanna climb with. So you really gotta be careful with stuff like that, so.
Wow.
Yeah, so those people would not be people I would wanna do a road trip with, or I don't think I wanna go to the mall with them. But,